last 30 years, the forces of autocracy
принято решение о проведении специальной военной
The
операции.
Russian army is committing barbaric actions.
Welcome to today's conversation on understanding the war. And today we are actually going to delve into technology in wartime. You'll remember that one of the episodes we looked at the instruments of power and instruments of war. We outlined information and energy and sanctions, and one of them being technology as well. And we're really happy to have in this conversation one of our policy leader fellows, Lucia Velasco. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
When you go back and look at the Geneva Conventions, right? I mean, they date back to the 1800s, 1864. And surely, I mean, technology wasn't really in the cards at the time. So can you give us a little bit of a context on how you see technology in the war and dating back to the rules that exist in this field?
Yes, of course. The most interesting thing that we see with the Geneva Conventions that are meant to be the rules that guide us through these barbaric times of war is that they're not updated. They were firstly signed in 1864, and then there have been several updates later, but the last one, I think it's maybe 50 years old, so there's no way that it does reflect the today's world and the digital world that we live in. So how can you give them any legitimacy if they don't reflect what is going on?
So what is sort of missing from the Geneva Conventions if you look at modern warfare and technology? I mean, what are we talking, like old mobile phones, or did mobile phones even exist when the conventions were done?
Actually not, and if you see the second convention, for example, is about the war and in the sea. How should maritime war should be handled, but it's more probable to have a war in cyberspace right now than at the sea. So this is something that's not at all in the picture. And some years ago at the World Economic Forum, even Microsoft was asking for this sort of update of the rules, because all the players need some rules.
Yeah, I mean, of course, in today's world where everything can be weaponized, and right now in the war in Ukraine, of course, a lot of technical implications and technology being used as well. Now, how do you look at the war in Ukraine and the way in which technology has been used during the war? I mean, what are the sort of big takeaways for you?
I think it's interesting because this is not the typical situation where we are seeing weapons, like technological weapons, being used, probably because Russia is not a superpower in that space, and neither is Ukraine. But we are seeing a different spectrum of technology, such as social media, for example, to influence the opinion of not precisely the West, but the rest, as you say. And we can see how the spread of disinformation and misinformation is affecting a lot how the countries are behaving in relation to the war itself. For example, we also have seen the Ukrainian government publish pictures of Russian soldiers, and in a way trying to connect also with probably with the families, and but at the same time we're not sure if that is okay with regards to privacy and to data collection. So there's a lot of new tools being used, also because the people involved are probably younger, and there's no rules about how to use them.
So technology is basically used as a source of information, a way in which you sort of distribute it and go into a propaganda war as well. And of course, we all remember the sort of selfies of President Zelensky early on, and then there are moments when that information is then distributed on on the net or through social media. And where does the limit go? I mean, what are you allowed to show and what are you not allowed to show? Does the Geneva Conventions, do they give us answers to this?
No, of course no. That's the point. And also, which is the jurisdiction that applies with regards to data protection, for example? Which are the rules? Because we are talking, and not only in this conflict, but probably in others, we're going to see different understandings of data protection, and you need to have a clear perspective of which are the ones that you need to comply with. If you're a European country engaging in a conflict, would you need to be accountable, such as if you were in a European country, or is it on the contrary, on the country that you are, in the conflict? So these are interesting questions that I think that we need to do ourselves, and that the global order in the end needs to make itself to be able to give some answers to the players and to the actors, because even the humanitarian actors don't have a clear understanding of what can be done or what is right or what is wrong in the context of data, personal information, privacy.
Yeah. How about if we move then from the information side of things into probably the cyber side of things, and we get into sort of the limits of warfare on cyber attacks. I mean, are you allowed to, or what do the Geneva Conventions say about attacking, say, a source of energy or the internet system? I mean, what is there anything?
Yes, in the end, it has to do with all the critical infrastructures, and not only none of this is contemplated in the rules of war, let's say. These are all new spaces in which we need to create some order as well, and not only to the critical infrastructures such as the ones you were mentioning, but also what happens if you target civilians in the cyberspace? What happens if you bulk personal information of people to push them to do things? What happens if there's not an actor clearly identified behind these actions? Can they be pursued? Can you gather proof to take them to court in this new space?
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the big things, of course. I mean, one of the stories that I've read about throughout the war is Russian military selling detecting advices corruptly to someone else and then having to use, say, Ukrainian SIM cards. And when they've done that, it's been very easy to target them. And, there's been discussion about some Russian generals falling a prey because of this. I mean, isn't this to a certain extent as well, one of these rules that is unwritten?
Yeah, and also it has to do with, it's not even if you use technology for good. For example, in Ukraine, at some point, a North American company called Clearview AI, which is an enormous database that scrapes information from the website and gathers all the images of people, and then you can identify those people. Put the software at the service of the Ukraine government, which at the first glance you would say, okay, it's fine because it's for the good guys who are defending themselves, but it's also a violation of privacy. This software, for example, has been forbidden in France because it's highly invasive with regards to personal information. And even if the Ukraine soldiers were using it to identify the Russian ones in the battlefield through facial recognition, that is something that we don't know if it's fine. We haven't agreed. Let's say the Geneva Conventions in the end are agreements that we have signed and that we support, but we haven't agreed anything on technology.
How about then, just one question, Elon Musk, right? In the beginning of the war, there was a story, he moved some satellites. I didn't really understand what it was all about. So what was that about? Was that okay to do? I mean, and then the Ukrainian government thanked him. And what was this? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's also, I mean, it's such a confusion because that's a private actor putting infrastructure at the service of a country to defend himself. So how can this, because in the past nobody thought, that you came out of your house and you put, a couple of tanks and you gave them to the other army. It's the same, but with satellites to provide with infrastructure and with network and connectivity. So we need to say, is this okay? Can, private citizens provide any of the sides of the conflict? Would that imply any other commitments to the country itself? I don't know. It's that sort of.
How about then drones? I mean, we're moving to a world whereby war is actually possible without human beings. Are there any rules for that? I mean, just sending in a little drone to kill someone, or I don't know.
Yes, and that also has to do with all the question around autonomous weapons. We're developing, or it's been developed, a lot of technology to engage in conflict without human beings involved, which again, it sounds okay if you can save some lives, but the decision that you make when you send people to war, and probably you will understand that feeling as a person who has taken decisions, very important decisions in a government. You take that decision understanding the cost that it's going to take. But if you're just sending technology, the cost is much smaller. So again, we need to rebalance how we're taking decisions, because I at least feel that in the old times we held back with regards to conflict because of the cost of opportunity, the lives, and also the public opinion.
Yeah.
But when the kids of nobody are going to die, in the end, what do you care?
Yeah, and then of course, if you can use technology as a weapon, which our argument here is, the question is who is in charge of that technology as well, because there are obviously possibilities already nowadays to have autonomous technology in form of drones or whatever it might be, taking the decisions in a war situation. But shouldn't it really be so that a human being has the final say on whatever the drone does? Or how does this work?
Well, again, it's something that we need to decide upon, because is it a better decision, the one of a machine program with no feelings, no emotions, no physical condition? Probably the machine will take a better decision if you ask me. But at the same time, are we possibly thinking that a machine can decide whether to kill or not another person, for example, or a target? Or what happens if something goes wrong, or the machine goes wrong? Who will be the responsibility? Who will be held accountable for that? So since we don't have rules, we don't have oversight mechanisms, and there's a lot of stakeholders taking decisions on their own, and that is dangerous. And we have seen that in social media out of the war environment, where we are at the same time saying you need to put some rules in the platforms, but at the same time we're saying, but you are not entitled to put rules. So this is the right moment to think of the set of rules that respond to today's needs.
It's very good. It's been super interesting, Lucia. Can you just give us, to finish off with, we've talked about a lot of examples of technology. What would be the one or two key things that you would want sorting out from the experience that we've seen in the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine? What is the one or two key ones that you'd really like to see some rules on?
To me, this is this unfortunate situation that we are seeing calls us to update all the global governance frameworks because they do not reflect today's reality, and therefore we are experiencing a risk of losing the legitimacy that they used to have because they are outdated. So it is the time to have all the conversations that we need to have and to make sure that across the board we have all the rules and all the agreements with the new global order as well updated.
Thank you very much, Lucia, and thank you to all of you for listening to this once again fascinating conversation about technology and the war. And remember that robots, artificial intelligence, technology is not only part of our daily lives, can be used for the good, but can also be used as a weapon and for the bad. And I think the takeaway of today is that we need a new Geneva Convention on the use of technology in wartime. Thank you very much.
Over the last 30 years, the forces of
Мною
autocracy
принято решение о проведении специальной военной
The
операции.
Russian army is committing barbaric actions